Sometimes God calls you to abandon ship figuratively, to give up your dreams, plans, and ambitions. Other times, the call is to abandon ship literally. In today's episode, you will hear from a couple that had to do both and wrestle with the implications.
Hello and welcome to another episode of To the Ends of the Earth, a CMML podcast. I'm Aaron Fullen.
And I am Joel Hernandez, and we are very glad to be here. Ezra and Joanna Brainard are young missionaries serving in the Amazon region of Brazil, along with their 4 children, Andrew, Philip, Henrietta, and Eric. They've been served by CMML since 2023 and were commended to the work by Emmaus Bible Chapel in St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome very much, Ezra and Joanna, and we're very happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Tell us the story. Tell us your story. Like, where'd you come from and how'd you meet?
You start.
Me start. Okay. So, I was raised in a family where missions was very much part of our lives. I pretty much learned to reading missionary stories. And so I had this desire to be a missionary for years. And in 2017, it was really coming to a head. And through the help of another missionary who had spent 30 years planting churches in Indonesia, he had just really made it clear to me. He was like, Ezra, from everything you say, God is leading you to the mission field, and you'd better go.
Just like that.
He's like, yeah, you're right. And so I started really orienting my life towards that purpose, that goal. And I made a trip down to Brazil, right into the same area we're working in the corner of Colombia and Peru, to visit my sister and brother-in-law who were down there at the time. And I got acquainted with the work, got acquainted with what was going on there, and they knew that I had that goal, that direction to be on the mission field. And so it was that January of 17-18 that I was there. And that was my New Year's resolution, essentially, that I was going to be on the mission field by the end of the year, 2018. And so the one big question for me was if Joanna was going to be going with me. So
Wait, are you married at this
No.
point? Okay. Glad to hear that.
That's an important detail.
then I go back to the States, and Joanna and I have a very short engagement and got married in April of 2018.
So we skipped a little part there.
Wow.
Fill in some gaps.
Fill in the
Let's see.
details.
So
Let's
how
see.
did you two meet?
So I was also raised in a Christian home where missions was very much a theme, a focus. My parents wanted to be missionaries, and the Lord never opened the door for them to go. But they definitely, that was a priority on their hearts, and it passed down to me and several of my siblings. Growing up, we also listened to, read lots of missionary stories. And I was 5 when I heard the story of Gladys Aylward, and on a cassette tape from a history curriculum. And I was inspired. I wanted to be a missionary when I grew up. And that stayed pretty steady through my childhood into my teens. So when Ezra came through my family's home, by that point, I was 20, living at home, but I had that desire myself for missions, and foreign missions specifically, right? And Ezra coming through, we just connected over that right away. For me, it was like, hey, this is a nice guy. He's nice. I mean, again, we'd known each other a long time, but now reconnecting like as adults was like, this is a nice guy to hang out with, and similar, you know, goals in life. I like it. And he's like, I'm gonna marry this girl. So he knew I wasn't. I took a little bit longer, but obviously not too long, because yeah, to make a short story even shorter, when he came back from Brazil, we had a very short courtship, got engaged, and got married that spring. And we first arrived in Brazil that November.
So before we go any further, I think it's important to ask this question, because I think a lot of people will be wondering it. Is there any relation or connection to David Brainard, who had his journals published during...
Yes, a very distant
Okay.
relationship. So, David Brainard's grandfather came over to the U.S. in 1640. I get asked this question a bit. In fact.
I would assume you do.
So,
yes.
1640, as an 8-year-old orphan.
Hmm.
And the assumption is that his name in England was probably Bernard or something. And on his U.S. documents, it got written down as Brainard.
Oh.
So he is the first Brainard. All Brainards are descendants of him, whether your name is spelt with an E or an A. So David Brainard is Brainerd. Somewhere along the line, ours got changed to ARD. But it's the same name. And that first Brainard, Daniel, had 8 sons, and he was raised in a Presbyterian family. And he had 8 sons. One of his sons had a son named David. So I honestly don't even know, but according to what I know, we would be descendants of one of his uncles.
Okay. Good to know. Maybe by the time this podcast release, we'll have traced all of that out, and we'll know with confidence where you came from.
That's great.
So eventually, you made your way to Brazil, as you were saying.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the challenges that came with that, specifically like the interview you had at the consulate in Chicago.
Yeah. So we applied at the time that we entered. We're headed to Brazil. We had to apply for a visa to enter the country. Getting a missionary visa is very complicated, and it was going to be easier for us to get a tourist visa. By the time we were headed to Brazil later that year, I was expecting, and so we were going to have our anchor baby in Brazil. We're like, we'll get a tourist visa, totally legal, for 4 months. We'll go to Brazil, we'll have a baby, and then we'll get residency. That was...
It's a good plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't plan all these things, but when we got married, we're like, no, Lord, it would be really nice timing if we could have a baby down there. And the Lord blessed that way. So we had applied for our visa, a 4-month visa, and then we get hear back from the Brazil consulate, and they're like, we want you here in person. We need to talk. So like, okay. We get there to the consulate in Chicago. It turns out that their skepticism and their concern was that, the very complication with a missionary visa is that they don't want you to evangelize the indigenous in Brazil.
Okay.
That's their rule. Now that's not our focus, but we're not going to sign a paper saying that we won't tell certain people the gospel. We're just not going to do that.
Right.
And that's what you need to do to get a missionary visa. That's why we're bypassing that. But the 4-month tourist visa made them wonder, are you guys trying to go down there as missionaries? So our honest answer is, I mean, right now with this tourist visa, we're not going down as missionaries so much as we're going down to have a baby and then get residency. But we weren't sure how that answer would come across, or how they would take that. So we go and sit in for our interview. I'm like 5 months along by now, starting to show.
Oh.
We get sat down at this little window with a little desk, and baby on the way conveniently hides under this desk.
They can't see it.
They can't see. She comes, sits down, and we do our interview, and it's a little tense, but she never asked. I never had to say. And we were able to get our visa approved.
Wow.
And it was a really neat confirmation, because when we started headed toward Brazil, we came to the conclusion that this was the open door. We had been invited from Ezra's brother-in-law, and we're like, this is the door the Lord has opened. we're going to pursue it and allow the Lord to close it if he wants to. So when this came up, it was an obstacle where you're like, okay, this is a way he could close the door.
Mhm.
And to see how he let it stay open was like an extra confirmation for us. Like, okay, this is where he's wanting us to be. So that was a little hiccup in that, but it ended up helping us see God's hand, even more. Those challenges have a way of doing that. So that was.
Did you
That was
like
cool.
stay seated until she
I
left
did.
the room?
That was how it worked.
Yeah.
They had us sit down. She came to interview us, and they had us stay seated there until she left, and they had us sign paperwork. And so we weren't even staging it. That was literally how they set it up. And like, hey, that works. That
How
works.
ideal.
So, yes.
And then you had a 4-month window in which to have a baby.
Yeah, we arrived. I was almost 7 months along, like just at that point where they're hardly going to let you fly internationally. So I was almost 7 months along when we landed in Brazil.
And then as soon as we get to Brazil, all the locals, when they figured out that we were coming to Brazil to have a baby, they just loved it.
They were so
They were,
excited.
oh, you're coming. We all want to go to the U.S. and have babies. You're coming here to have a baby with our
They were like, oh, he's going to be a Brazilian. And they were so excited about that.
Reverse immigration.
Yes. Right?
There you go.
So that's Andrew.
That's
Andrew
Andrew,
was-
our
okay.
oldest.
Yep.
So we get to right in this little corner of Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. Benjamin Constant is where we first arrive. And the medical facility there, the medical facility situation there is not great. So our plan was to travel downriver to Manaus, which is the capital of Amazonas state, to have Andrew. It's the largest state, like geographically, but very sparse. Kind of like, think of Alaska. Like it's really little villages, little towns here and there. Everything is you're either traveling by boat or plane.
Okay.
There aren't roads to traverse the state. So we're traveling by boat. We took one of their big steel ships downriver, a 3-day trip. Got violent food poisoning.
Oh my.
By now I was 8 months pregnant, and that
Welcome
was
to Brazil.
Yes. Now it was 8 months along, and
Oh.
that was an exhausting trip.
Yep.
But
I
we
bet.
made it there, had our baby in a Brazilian hospital without knowing the language. We didn't know Portuguese when we arrived.
Wow.
So
as soon as you cross cultures, there's a whole world of new like realities and adventures and mistakes and things that happen. Tell us some of those stories.
comes to your mind? You go first. I've been talking a lot.
Okay, so while we were there, so we're in Manaus, just after Andrew is born, and we're doing paperwork. And I'm trying to get around Brazil, around the city, to figure out where I need to get paperwork. I think what I was running after at this day was fingerprints. I needed to get fingerprints from me and Joanna to send to actually the FBI in the U.S., I believe. They needed a FBI background check on us before they could give us residency.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
We're all
I'm
clear.
finding
Just for the record.
You're not
Proof.
We're all clear.
So I'm trying to figure out a place that'll get clear enough fingerprints according to the U.S. standards. So anyway, I'm going around from place to place, and everyone sends me to somewhere else, and I'm just barely knowing the language. Well, it's hot. It's the middle of the jungle. I'm traveling around in shorts, okay, and taking taxis from one place to another trying to figure this out. Well, I finally get to a place that might be able to help, and they're all talking, and my taxi driver knows just a little bit of English, and I'm hearing everybody talk, and I'm sitting here in the police station, and they're like, wow, what's going on? And the taxi driver tells me, it's like, they can't attend you if you're wearing shorts.
What?
And I'm like, oh.
It's the dress code. You have to have
dress
long
code.
pants to go up in this official building.
It's just like no shirt, no shoes, no service.
Okay.
Right? It is no shirt, no shoes, no shorts, no service.
No, yeah.
Or no long pants, I mean, yeah. So anyway, he was like, point at,
He's wearing long pants.
change. So, and I got the idea. Yeah. Like, yeah, let's do it. So we run into the men's restroom. We change pants.
All
He
the
wears
gals
my
at the
shorts.
desk were giggling. Like, they could tell what was going on.
And I wear his pants. And we go in there, and sure enough,
I'm amazed they were long enough. The guy was kind of short. Somehow
and
the pants
I
were...
put his pants on, and I go and get the service that I need, and go. We change
Swap
pants, change pants, and he takes me home.
3/4 length is good enough. Yeah,
Capris
capris.
work in that
Oh boy.
That was funny. And then for me having a newborn, the way that every mother, especially like every grandma that I meet on the street, that I meet anywhere, takes it upon themselves to be my mom. They want to make sure I'm parenting my baby right. Make sure I'm taking care of my baby right. He doesn't have a hat. He doesn't have socks. He needs a blanket. It's 1,000,000,000 degrees outside, but he needs a blanket and hats and socks. And, is he up to date on his vaccines and all? Like, you literally just walking past me on the street, you're asking me all this medical information. They want to make sure I'm taking care of my baby. Like, it's a very maybe matriarchal culture. And sadly, a lot of it's because of absent fathers. But mothers take on that role with diligence, and they want to make sure that all the babies are cared for. And one time that took the form of me trying to nurse my baby. I'm a brand new mom, so I hardly know what I'm doing anyway, but I have a blanket trying to be all decent. Brazilians don't do that. They don't cover up anything. And this sweet lady, probably my mom's age, sees the situation, sees the struggle, and she looks horrified. She comes over, yanks the blanket off, starts fanning Andrew. We're right in the middle of like a store or something. I had sat down. She yanks the blanket off. She's like, nobody's looking, and he's way too hot. And she's like, starts holding the baby, trying to get him on. Like, I'm like, okay, part of me wants to turn green and just kind of disappear right now. I would really like to disappear. I was also touched with, like, obviously she cares, but like, it would be nice to disappear right now. Right now. The idea of a bubble, the idea of a bubble, that we have in the States is like our space is not a thing. It's not a thing in Brazil.
Yeah.
So privacy, personal decisions, all of that is not really there. It's not there.
That'd be hard to get used to.
It is. It is. Our first house that we lived in, that was like not our apartment that we initially were. Our first house was a little wood house with screen windows, and up the road from an indigenous community. And the kids walking back from school, they like to peek through the window. They pretended that they were wanting to see the baby, but they wanted to see my house. They were just curious of what American house looks like. But the older Chikuna ladies, they had no pretense. They would stop, stand straight and right facing my window with their basket of fruit on their head, just staring into my kitchen, just staring like, I'm like, okay, hi.
Welcome.
I mean, they said nothing. I could probably not have even communicated. I don't even know if they spoke Portuguese because they're indigenous. I mean, I was such a sight to behold.
Yeah.
They probably figured I stared at myself. Like, what? You are so weird. Who wouldn't stare at you? That was different. That was different for sure. I read about this in missionary stories growing up. I didn't realize like that's still the case, that the foreigners are still very interesting.
You've just gotten more accustomed to that.
By now, yeah.
Yeah.
By now, yeah. And I think we maybe carry ourselves a little bit more comfortably to where we don't blend in, but I think we don't stand out the same way as we did. So
What goes through your mind when you hear it was a dark and stormy night? Excitement? Fear? Anticipation? Everybody loves stories. We at CMML have the amazing privilege of hearing from missionaries, people who are advancing the spread of the gospel globally, and they tell us the most fascinating stories of what God is doing all over the world today. There are stories of answered prayer, unexpected breakthroughs, remarkable transformations. All over the world, God is doing extraordinary things through ordinary people. And when we at CMML hear these stories, we just want to share them. This is what To the Ends of the Earth is all about. It's a podcast about missionary stories that will capture your imagination and move your heart and increase your faith. to the ends of the earth will compel you to lift up your eyes to see the fields that are ripe for harvest. Don't miss a single episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
So when you get there and before you know the language, what did your ministry look like as you learned the language?
Okay, so the first few months was just language study.
Okay.
Early on, I got myself a Portuguese Bible. I was like, I'm just going to do this. And it was work, but I didn't have anything else to do. I had all day just to study and read the Bible. So if my Bible reading for the day was 2 or 3 verses and it took all day, that was fine. I worked through it. And then the next day, a couple more. And we had, so we're in Manaus at this time and asking around, and we find out, okay, there's somebody that teaches language, and we figure out his price. It was like, we can't afford that. But then we're walking down the road one day and I see a sign that says English lessons. And I was like, if someone's teaching English, that means they can teach Portuguese. So I get the WhatsApp number and I send a message and I was like, hey, I saw you're in English teaching school. Can you teach me Portuguese? And a couple days later, I got a message from a lady and she's like, hey, the school is an English only school. They can't help, but they shared your text with all of us teachers to see if any of us want to do it privately. And I would like to do it.
Wow.
I was like, all right, this is where we live. When can you come?
You found a tutor.
Yeah.
Found a tutor
Yeah.
at
And
a
so-
Brazilian rate.
Oh,
Yeah.
Which made
'cause
it affordable.
Now because
Even better.
the teacher who was teaching English to missionaries and such, it was teaching at the wage and a U.S. dollar wage.
Yep.
And we couldn't afford that. But now a Brazilian wage, yeah.
We
no,
can do
we
that.
can do
We can do
this.
that.
Divide it by 5.
Wow.
And so we can do that. So she came to our house 2 times a week, right?
Yeah,
I think
2
it
or
was
3 times a week.
2 or 3 times a week. She'd come to our house for a couple hours and we'd work through a whole bunch. So that was really helpful.
Wow. And you
And-
learned
Yeah. Oh,
from
yeah.
the same tutor?
We
Okay.
learned. Yeah, she sat down with Ezra and I, and then his sister-in-law, a sister who was there with us at the time.
Okay.
And yeah, she taught us all together. It's the stereotype is that the wife staying at home doesn't learn the language as fast. And we've eventually kind of came to that point, but between me having studied a little Spanish when I was younger and just having more of that, experience of learning a language,
Yeah.
I did pick it up faster initially. Only initially.
Wow.
He passed
Oh.
me up.
More than just initially. Like, Joanna is natural with music. She's natural with language. She's natural with
Just has the
memorization.
gift.
Yep.
Yep.
Like, memorization is a huge part of language learning, and she's natural with that. So, and then even just the pronunciation, the accent. We were only there a year, and people were asking her if she was Colombian. Because
Not Brazilian.
Not
Colombian.
Brazilian. Like, they knew she
Because
was.
I still had a little bit of the Spanish accent in my
Yeah.
They're
Portuguese.
like, oh, are you Colombian?
But still,
Oh,
South American
And
native.
I still haven't been asked that.
That red beard, it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you a while. When we moved back to the corner of Peru, Colombia, and Brazil after we did documentation in Manaus and everything, we found we would be out in the middle of the jungle and there would be these tourists coming in, English speaking, European, usually European, the occasional American that would, maybe not know their way around, or they would just, they just came. So a lot of those kind of European tourists that came to our area were coming specifically on a spiritual mission. They were coming from a very secularized Western culture, wanting to come to the Amazon to experience something deeper, more meaningful. So it's kind of a very okay, this is a good audience, you know? We don't have the spirituality that they're looking for, but we have the real thing. And so Ezra just started, when he would run into those folks out shopping or just running around town, he
You
would
can spot 'em.
yeah,
Oh, that's a
yeah.
tourist.
Really?
Yeah. The outfit, the skin color, everything. You'd like, oh, that's a tourist. They're lost right now.
They need help.
Yeah, on more levels than one.
And you bumped into a guy who was starting his own religion?
Yes, I did.
Tell us that story.
Expound, please.
So, yeah, let's see if I can bring this back. Just same sort of thing. Just see a guy, it's like, oh, that's obviously a tourist. So I came over. Hey, need help with anything? Know where you're going? Need to. Well, I was still learning Portuguese, so I could help him a little bit. I thought I probably knew more than he did, you know. And we got talking with him, and we visited a little bit, and I tried sharing the gospel with him, and eventually he was like, I'm starting my own religion. Maybe you would like to share my message.
Whoa.
Just as you've been sharing this message, maybe you would like to share my message too, or something like that. Well, what do you say to that?
So naturally,
But-
you agreed to meet with him for coffee the next day.
Yeah,
Of
naturally,
course.
Sure. There's
Yeah.
an opportunity.
it's
Yeah.
opportunity.
What is your message?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, there is no real difference. There's no substantial difference between you and I or Adolf Hitler, except the grace of God. And at that point, he changed. It went from just being a normal conversation and, disagreements on these subjects. He started screaming, his voice changed, and he went crazy.
Oh my.
Ooh.
And it was so demonic that it actually gave me more confidence,
Wait, how did
Because-
that give you confidence?
because I had this absolute sense that what I had said was the truth that made his demons angry. And so I knew that therefore God was with me. It was just a strange sense that this man cannot hurt me. And I just stood there smiling at him, and there was other people walking by that were scared. They're like, are you okay? And it's like, don't worry about it.
Just speaking the truth over
And-
here.
Wow.
It was just a crazy experience of
Sensing the presence of God.
sensing the presence of God,
Mm.
and in a powerful way that became so much more evident when I saw the demonic manifestation.
Yeah.
He calmed down a bit afterwards, and he apologized. He was,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. But now you know the difference between your religion and mine. And I was just like, yeah, sure do.
Yeah. And I'm firmly
But,
entrenched. Yes.
but he obviously had hit really to the heart, to the core, like you were saying,
Yeah.
just to when you came down to it, the fact that we are not basically good, which was obviously the God love religion idea, was
Right.
that we're all basically good.
Right.
And to really come down to the heart of it, of that we are sinners and we need a savior. And that was where he struck a chord, and it was a very chaotic chord.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So you had a setback in your
Yes.
original plans
Yes.
for what you were going to be doing down there. So originally you had a boat ministry in mind, correct?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
when Ezra and I were engaged and first making our plans to head to Brazil, because again, we both had that, we came together with missions already like on our hearts. And
Right.
so when we got engaged and we're getting married, he's already made his New Year's resolution. He's going to be on the field by the end of the year. And he made sure I knew that before like I signed up for this. So I knew if I marry Ezra, that's where we're headed, like to the field. We didn't know for certain where, but soon it became Brazil as the goal. From his previous visit, he really caught this vision for a boat ministry and a ministry where we would have a houseboat and we'd travel on these tributaries because again, there's no roads, it's all rivers. We'd be traveling these tributaries, taking the gospel to more remote, distant villages. So using this area, Benjamin Constant, this town as our base, but from there traveling on to more remote areas. So that was like always in the back of your mind, like the whole time as we were there. And it was 4 years in that a boat came for sale. And I was just like, I think this is our opportunity. We know the language. We can finally do it. We can get our houseboat. So I'm just kind of like, okay, honey, I'm following the Lord with you. I don't swim.
I was just going to say, there's an
So,
important detail here.
I don't swim. And so the idea of spending extended period with our now 3 small children who also don't swim
Right.
on the river was scary. But I'm like, following the Lord can be scary. And that's not the reason to not do it. So I'm like, okay. We go to the boat lot to check out this boat. And I had a full-on panic attack. Because you first have to walk a bridge that's like 6 inches, 7 inches across, a board that just goes up pretty steep. I want to say 9 feet up from the shore to the boat, and you have to walk that plank, walk the plank to get on board. And I'm like, I literally can't do this. We haven't even bought the boat yet. We're just going to look at it. I'm like, I can't do this. But I'm like, I've struggled with anxiety in the past, and I know I just need to conquer this fear. Just got to push through it. So we start walking the plank. I got there with much sobbing and emotion. But we did get on board. We checked out the boat. We're like, this is gonna work. So we bought it, started fixing it out.
Was it in pretty rough shape?
It was in rougher shape than we realized.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was rougher shaped than we realized.
So there was a bit of work to be done to make it, I was going to say seaworthy, river-worthy, travel-worthy.
Yeah.
So it's a houseboat.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah,
kind of.
very rudimentary. So it had the basics.
Had potential.
Had potential for sure. It took several months
Got
to
several
get
months.
that
And it was
up and running.
started doing a couple first just little trips really nearby, going
Over a weekend. We'd
Over
go
a
to a
weekend.
nearby village, camp out there for a weekend. We'd show the King of Glory movie
Oh,
by
the Bramsons.
yeah,
yes.
set it up on the
In
beach.
Portuguese. We had a portable projector screen that we could set up on the beach and pass out popcorn and just spend the weekend. We'd play it over the weekend, section it out, and it was a really neat opportunity. Basically, we couldn't go through a weekend without me collapsing into a panic attack or some kind of just just a full-on emotional breakdown. And then I kind of pulled myself together, and we get home. I'm like, I can do this again. I'll do it again. Just gotta trust the
So then
Lord
a couple
more.
weeks later, we'd try something again, and it also would be
We were
difficult.
doing it like every other week.
And the anxiety, the source of the anxiety, do you know what it was?
It was varied. Not knowing how to swim, my kids not knowing how to swim, and bandits.
Mm.
Bandits are a concern.
Mm.
Trafficking is a concern.
Mm.
Between those two, it was kind of a mother's worst nightmare
Yeah.
of my children
Const-
getting taken away type of thing.
Yeah.
Both of those things happen. And I've got the blondest, blue-eyed children. It's they definitely call attention.
You said both of those things happened to
They
you?
not to me, but they are things that happen in the
Yeah.
region. So they were like probably not as likely as my anxiety made me feel, but definitely a risk factor that played into it.
Okay.
So I was just like,
A perfect storm.
push. Yeah, just push through this. We're gonna just trust the Lord and keep going.
Because you felt that this is the Lord's will. Like this
Yeah,
is a ministry that
it
He
was-
has for us.
Exactly. And it was I was nervous about it from the start, but I was like, I want to follow my husband and just we're going to do this together and I'm going to support him.
And yeah.
And then that was just really hard.
Mhm.
Really hard.
From time to time, we receive calls at CMML from believers who sense the Lord stirring their hearts and simply asking themselves, is there a need on the mission field? How can we help? One such call came from a former missionary, and it stayed with me as a powerful reminder of how God provides and how He invites His people into that provision. This former missionary shared that she had been faithfully saving to replace the roof on her home. When contractors came to give estimates, one of them spent an unusual time up on the roof, and when he finally came down, he said something she never expected. He told her that while he was on the roof, the Lord had clearly impressed on his heart that he was to replace her roof for free. She explained that she already had the $20,000 set aside, believing the Lord had provided it for that purpose. Contractor's response was simple yet profound. That might be money for a roof, but not for this roof. Unsure what to do next, she called CMML and asked if there was a roof somewhere needed in the world. At that very time, we had just received reports from 2 mission fields, one in Burundi, another deep in the jungles of Peru. Both locations, the believers had poured the floors and raised the walls of a new assembly building, but the work had stopped, waiting for the Lord to provide for the roofs. I reached out to both of these missionaries and learned that $10,000 would complete each of these roofs. Without hesitation, the sister joyfully sent the funds, grateful to having discovered which roofs the Lord had provided for. What a beautiful example of a believer who recognized that all she had comes from the Lord and was ultimately for His service. Rather than clinging to this provision, she prayerfully asked God how He might use it, and in doing so became part of His work in other locations around the world. Philippians 4:19, "But my God shall supply all your need according to His riches in glory by Christ Jesus." God is still the great provider. The question is never, will He provide? It's who is He going to use? As in this story, He used this former missionary to supply the needs of His active missionaries in Burundi and Peru to put roofs on these assembly buildings. May we be found faithful in prayer, generous in giving, and ready to serve in His mission wherever He sends.
And Ezra, how are you processing all of what was happening with your spouse while trying to do this ministry on the weekends?
I don't even know.
Yeah,
It
still
was-
processing it.
Yeah, still processing it. And yeah, I had this sense that this is the ministry that God had called us to the area for. And, He's, beginning to open the door. We finally had the boat and we weren't really able to use it. Like, even the trips that we had done were all nearby excursions that the boat that we had fixed up was bigger than what was needed for what we were doing. So we still weren't even doing the real goal, and it was, difficult and discouraging. And so some of those things that we had started, I continued to go to some of those areas on day trips and doing Bible studies, and the boat just kind of started sitting there.
We were pushing through for, I want to say, nearly a year.
Yeah, nearly a
Going
year that we would do
twice a month
something.
or so on our little
something
boat.
at least once a month for about a year.
And we came to a trip where we did our trip. We came back, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this again in a couple of weeks. And Ezra's like, no, I don't think I can. I can't put you through that again. And it was my worst nightmare, another worst nightmare, because I was like, here I'm supposed to be supporting my husband and his vision, and like I broke it.
You felt you were
I felt
letting
like I
him
broke
down.
it. I felt like I let him down. Like here I failed him. That was hard.
Yeah.
that
So then that was a whole new struggle.
Yeah.
To not go. To
Right.
go
Yeah.
was a struggle. To not go is a struggle. There's
Yeah.
there's no
there wasn't a
But-
win.
no, there's no winning. But we continued focusing in on some Bible study opportunities, and we'd continue to go to these villages, and me and another pastor friend, and and during all this time, it was discouraging. We were like, this was just to fill in our time. For me, it was like, this wasn't really I really thought God had called us here for.
Mhm.
But it was something to keep me occupied with the Lord's work and why we were in the area. And
Wow.
Yeah, that launched me into probably the worst depression that I've ever had. Just of that feeling of I failed, and
You're, you're using a strong word. I mean, it's not just discouragement.
No.
You went beyond that.
no,
Yeah.
I would say it was beyond that. It was physically incapacitating. It got
Mm.
to where I was not functioning well just as a mom and a wife. I I just felt like totally
And then we
worthless
came back.
in a way. And it was, sorry.
Go on.
It was that feeling like I felt like if this was like a physical or like, I had cancer or something, I could justify like, well, I just couldn't. But it just felt like if I could just trust the Lord more, and yet I was hitting this limit where I was just not. And so it felt like this was because I failed. I was not a strong enough Christian. I failed. And so the guilt that weighed on me was heavy. And Ezra never like made me feel that way. I carried that myself. Of just that sense of I failed. I fell short.
So I think our audience, our listeners, our audience would be very surprised to discover that missionaries struggle, that they struggle with discouragement, that they
Agree.
struggle with failure. And so, wow, this is profound.
Then we, right in this situation is essentially where we were when we went to MOP 2023. So remember, we'd been on the field for a few years before we get associated with CMML.
And MOP is the Missions Orientation Program, a training week for aspiring missionaries.
As soon as we get connected with CMML, which was actually I can't remember. Early, must have been pretty early in 2023.
Yeah.
And then we made it to that very next MOP. We came to the States just for that. We're like, yeah, we want to do that. Mm-hmm. And now see if I can maintain myself. But after these struggles that we've been going through, Joanna and I just bawled our eyes out through all of Paul Rabideau's sessions on burnout.
Paul is a licensed counselor that was there at the training week and talked about burnout and depression, and it hit a nerve.
Yeah,
very much, because he was speaking to aspiring missionaries, and we'd already experienced it firsthand. And like, oh wow, yeah, that's what's happening right now.
We had just been through, we just experienced all the failures that he's telling them not to make. And you're like, we just did all that.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Unfortunately, missionaries aren't super Christians. I thought they were too.
Yeah.
And
you had that expectation of yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that makes it harder,
And I always, when I would read missionary stories, I would notice the wives, because that was my aspiration, to be a missionary wife. Like, okay, that one went insane. Okay, that was obviously not a strong Christian. And then this one, she was supportive the whole way through. I'm gonna be like this one. It really was a heavy blow to my pride. And I, that feeling of I failed. I totally failed. And for me to come to recognize, what? Yeah, I have this weakness, but that's where Christ wants to be glorified. And so that time of, again, I don't think depression is too strong of a word for what I was going through. As I came through that, I started realizing, what, Lord, if this is going to glorify you, if breaking me down and me seeing my failure and my weakness is going to glorify you, then it's okay. Just that was hard.
Yeah. And like Joel was saying, I think it's very encouraging. It's hard for you, but very encouraging for others who may be listening to this to recognize that the Lord uses broken vessels, and humility is a prerequisite for effectiveness in your ministry. And how that comes about can sometimes be really, really hard and put you in situations like that. in order to be more effective down the road.
Mhm.
And so I'm encouraged by that. And
Does it sound like you're saying that it is possible that God intended for them to go through that in order for him to use them?
I would say so.
yeah.
I would say so. I remember when I got at the field at 21. I'd never been to Brazil before he'd been. I had been there, of course, didn't know the language. And I was thinking, I thought missionaries are more spiritual than I am. Like, I don't, I was like, I mean, I believe the Lord's called me and I'm here now, but like, I'm not, like, I knew all the pride and stuff. Not that that's not there still, but the pride and this idea of just ego, really, because missionaries were my heroes. For me, being a missionary was an exalted thing, even though that's not necessarily what other people think. I still felt that way, and I knew that was wrong. And yeah, I absolutely think the Lord allowed that breaking for me to to see that weakness. It's not like that weakness wasn't there before, but to bring it to the forefront and to break down a lot of the ego, because I was like, I can't. I would come to realize I can't stay on the field if it's for my ego. My ego isn't strong enough to keep me here, and I had to be reminded, like, God wants us here, because otherwise it's not enough just to stay here for my reputation, because I ran out of energy to maintain that.
So now the boat becomes like a symbol of
Yeah.
failure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you do with the boat?
Well, it sat in a port, and we paid a very small fee for a guy to watch it, and it just sat there tied up for a year. Sat there, and we didn't use it at all for a full year. And then we go to Manaus for Eric, our youngest son's birth. And while we were there, we get news that it's taking on water. You know, it was in rougher shape than we thought it was when we bought it. We fixed it up to be usable, but it was still in rough shape, and now it's taking on a lot of water. Okay, what are you going to do? So I called up our missionary friend who has another boat that is a little bit bigger than ours was, but with the same motor and same hardware. I was like, hey, no strings attached, absolutely nothing. If you want to just take this boat off my hands, you can have it.
Wow.
We haven't used it for a year. I don't see ourselves using it with the family that we have. I just don't, it wasn't possible for us to use it the way we wanted to. If you can find a use for it, you can have it. And he was like, all right, yeah, we'll do that for you. And then it just so happens that on the very day that the boat we were traveling on caught fire, that morning, this missionary sent me a message saying, Ezra, I'm so sorry. We just finally really taken a look at this boat, and it's not salvageable. We're going to take the motor out of it. We're going to take the transmission out of it and take everything out of value, and we're just going to let the rest go.
The guys that were looking at the boat that concluded it wasn't salvageable were like, it's the Lord's mercy you guys didn't sink aboard this ship with all your
Now,
kids on
granted, it
board.
was a year earlier that we had
Right.
been using it.
But it was already
So-
in a not good spot. Even then, it was so rotten. And so all this time where I just felt like I failed, because my anxiety and my fear has made us had to stop. But the Lord using that was protecting us, because we slept on that ship, and from the sounds of it, it could have gone down while we were on it. So,
And now you're walking away.
yeah.
Yep. To some extent, I guess that was a sort of closure of our boat, the boat stage of our life, of our mission work, which then has left us there. And, this past year, we've really, really had to pray about what we're going to focus on next. And so, yeah, Lord willing, we'll be able to focus on those Bible studies that I had thought were just time fillers just because there was nothing else to do. But looking back, I realized God was using that. And I was pouring all my energy and effort into something that wasn't working.
Hmm.
But if we go back and we put the energy and the effort into what was working, then yeah,
Let the Lord
Wow.
use that.
we'll see what happens from there.
For our listeners, Ezra and Joanna have something in common with David Brainerd, who we talked about, that famous missionary in the 1700s, and something beyond just their last name. They both had to walk away from their original plan, and they had to come to terms with God's leading when their original goal didn't materialize. They both left the comfort of home to reach indigenous people, and Brainerd, the missionary of old, constantly battled illness, likely tuberculosis, depression, isolation, and harsh environments. And yet he had to persevere. And so we're hearing some of the similarities in your story. The Bible says there are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel that will stand. Proverbs 19:21.
So when this happens, when you are convinced that God's plan for you is to have a boat ministry, and then he takes that away, I thought it was really interesting when we had our initial conversation before this podcast that you said, we don't have to get answers from the Lord for why we think our plans didn't work out. You know, so often when for example, if someone speeds by us on the interstate or we're late to an event, it comforts us by saying, wow, the Lord was probably preserving us from a car accident or something like that, where we try and rationalize why something happened and spiritualize it by saying, well, God was, this is why God did what he did. But you both said to us that we don't always get that, and that's okay. So how did you process all of this after you realized, okay, this boat dream, this boat ministry dream is literally dismantled?
Before all this had happened, a friend gave me the book, These Strange Ashes by Elizabeth Elliot. And I can't remember exactly her words, but putting what I learned from her into my words maybe would be, sometimes our plans go up in ashes, but God's plan never does. And we have to be able to trust in that truth even when we don't understand it. God never promised to tell us what the silver lining is. But he did tell us that he will bring good out of all things. So we know that that's the truth, but he's never promised to tell us what it is. And so sometimes you're there in the dark and you don't know why such and thus happened. Why did my plans go up in ashes?
And we have to be okay with that.
You have to be okay with that. The Bible story that really, I guess illustrates this is in the story of the Civil War in Judges, where Israel asked God, which tribe shall go up first? And God says, Judah. And then they lose. And that story doesn't make sense to us. Why does God say, Judah, go up first? And they weren't victorious. Don't know. But that's the way our lives are too. There's no reason to look back and say, oh, well, maybe, I guess God didn't lead us to Brazil. God didn't lead us for a boat. From all appearance, he did. But he didn't lead us to success in it. Why? I have no idea.
And so What do you cling to for comfort?
Just that God knows,
God knows.
and God's plan didn't go up in ashes.
And what really struck me was thinking of Christ on the cross when he calls out to the Father, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He obviously knew what he was doing. It's not that he didn't know. But even Christ asked a why that wasn't answered from heaven suddenly. And he's acquainted even with this. I mean, how can God know what it's like if he knows everything? And yet he, in the midst of the greatest anguish that there could ever be, called out to God, why? And left hanging. And the fact that he is acquainted with that. And he doesn't call us to an unanswered why without knowing what that was like. And that was really a precious comfort.
Powerful.
It is powerful. And I love that you have to have the perspective of it's bigger than us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know, we're in this timeline that we don't see God's full plan, but that you can rest in the fact that you're a part of that.
Yeah.
Whether you know where it leads or not, and having the trust in the goodness of God that one day when we're all home, you will know. You'll see it all. But for now, he is honored by the kind of trust that requires. So thank you for exemplifying that.
Praise God.
What would you, in closing, as we wrap up this episode, before part 2, where we hear another incredible story from you guys, what would you tell those listening to this who are discouraged because of their plans, something that they thought God was leading them towards, poof, goes up in ashes? Based on your experience, what personal advice would you give to these listeners?
After all the things described in Psalm 107, all the ups and the downs of the Lord does this and he does that, and the guy on the ship sees the goodness of God, and the Lord dries up the rivers and he waters the deserts, and the psalmist ends, but whoso is wise
And we'll observe
will
these things.
will observe these things.
Even they will understand the loving kindness of the Lord.
Even they will understand the loving kindness of the Lord. Whoso is wise can yet see it, looking at the same circumstances. And that wisdom is really what I think Elizabeth Elliot was getting at in her book when she talks about our plans going up in ashes, but that God's never does. You're looking at that bigger picture. And that's the wisdom that helps us see the loving kindness of the Lord in the same circumstances that someone else wouldn't see it.
I guess for me, when I was actively in depression, the verse that I clung to so much was Hagar's response to God, "Thou God seest me." I'd never experienced this before. Ezra didn't even hardly understand what was going on, and I didn't understand what was going on. And especially in light of the fact that he was a man of sorrows, he's acquainted with grief, that this disappointment and depression is not something that is foreign to him. He knows it. He knows it, and he knows it. Like in Portuguese, I'm sure Spanish too, there's saber and conhecer.
Yes.
Saber would be like, oh, yeah, I know of so and so, but conocer is like I know them personally. And Christ doesn't just know what our suffering is like because he knows everything, but he knows it experientially. And when he sees us and that cry of Hagar, "Thou God seest me," he knew he was a man of sorrows, and he's never forgotten what that sorrow was like. And so that was for me, really what I clung to in that time. And he never, like, I would be like, he never experienced the weight of guilt because he never sinned. And then I was like, wait a minute. He took all my guilt. So without sinning, he felt the weight of it. And he truly felt it all.
Mhm.
And that was just such a precious thing for me to know that I was understood.
Thank you, Ezra and Joanna, for that encouraging episode. We look forward to having you for another episode, part 2, another boat story,
Wow.
and we can't wait for that. In the meantime, those of you who are listening, wherever you may be, who may be experiencing a very similar experience as the Brainards, having to abandon a ship of your own, literally or figuratively, remember their encouragement that God sees you, that He is worthy of your trust, and that His plans will never go up in ashes. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to tune in for future episodes of To the Ends of the Earth.